Hi, who's ready to paint an adorable snowman? We're going to bump it up with 3 additional steps on here. First of all, we're going to add a stencil background. You're going to stamp on the scarf, and then we're going to add crystal glaze to the hat. Here are the supplies that you will need. First thing you want to do is take a sponge and remove any dust that may keep the glaze from adhering. Then, using the soft fan brush, you're going to apply 1 good coat of FN001 white foundations glaze to the front of the plate. The reason you're going to use the soft fan brush is because it holds a lot of glaze and it lays down a nice, flowing, smooth coat of foundations glaze, because this is going to be the foundation to your artwork. So while the glaze is drying, cut out the pattern of the snowman. The pattern is going to act as a masking tool. To get the pattern to adhere, you're going to want to wet the back of the pattern using a damp sponge, and then center it in the center of the plate and press it down. It's always good to take the damp sponge and then press down the edges to make sure it's stuck down good and tight, because you don't want the next step, which is going to be SC45 My Blue Heaven, to seep underneath that pattern. That way we have a nice white snowman. Using the soft fan brush, you're going to load your brush full and lay down 2 good coats of My Blue Heaven. Notice that we brush from the paper out to avoid pushing the glaze underneath the pattern. Rule of thumb again, every time the shine is off the glaze, it's ready for the next coat. The reason you don't want it bone dry is you want to have a little bit of tooth to grab hold of that next layer of glaze. Once that's dry enough to work, you can take the SL441 spots stencil and SC16 cottontail plus a dry sponge on a stick. Lay the stencil on the plate and try to work more in the flat area, as it's hard to get on the curve. Hold it with one hand, and then with your other hand, load the sponge with cottontail, blot it off on your palette, and then do a nice light and up and down pouncing motion over the stencil. You want to try to cover the dots with several pouncing motions. Cottontail is so heavily pigmented, it will even work over darker colors. Okay, you're going to pick up the stencil and move it around until you fill up the plate with white dots. Now, if you have some squared off spots, you can also just pick up the stencil and only pounce part of dot here or there to fill in the areas. Alright, for another little bit of visual interest, you're going to splatter the cottontail white over the background. So take a toothbrush, dip it into the glaze, and then run your thumb over the bristles to flick the glaze on the front of the plate. Okay, now you can remove the pattern. While that's drying, you want to cut out your second pattern. Lay it down where the snowman was originally, and then trace over all the lines and details. This is going to leave a dent into the glaze or give you an outline to work within for the rest of the steps. Note, you could have traced the first pattern on the platter and not had to do it a second time. Your choice. Using the RB106 script liner and SC16 cottontail, you're going to paint the face and the body of the snowman. Now, the script liner has really nice long brushes to hold a lot of glaze. This is going to allow you to lay down nice long coats of the glaze so that you can get an even background. Don't want a lot of those little short choppy brush strokes. While While the second coat is still wet of the cottontail, use SC60 silver lining and blend it in around the edges of the body and the face. This is going to just give you a little bit of additional shading and adds some depth and interest to your snowman. Once you've completed that, let's go to the ball of the hat, brim, and the scarf. We're going to switch over to SC11 Blue Yonder, but you're still going to use the script liner. You're going to put down 3 good coats of the Blue Yonder on the ball of the hat, the brim, and the scarf. Again, you want nice flowing coats. Don't try to stretch it. Allow the shine to go away between coats. The next step is to use SC76 Caribbean Blue. Pour out about the size of a tablespoon onto a palette, and then use the script liner to apply 2 good coats to the cap and the bottom of the scarf. Let's work on details that personalize this snowman. For those rosy little cheeks, squeeze out about the size of a dime of SC2 Melancholy. Then take the sponge and pinch it into a ball and dab it into the Melancholy glaze. Make sure you blot off extra glaze onto the palette before you pounce it onto the cheeks. For that cute little carrot nose, pour out a little bit of SC23 Jack-o'-lantern and use your RB 110 or 10-aught detail liner and apply 2 coats of the Jack-o'-lantern to the nose. Before we move on to the next step of stamping, make sure that the hat and scarf are dry before we stamp. If you stamp onto a damp glaze, it'll pull off a layer of glaze. You're going to pour out about a tablespoon of SC76 Caribbean Blue. You're going to need a sponge on a stick and the ST103 Retro Star Stamp. Now, here's 3 tips for stamping success. 1. Leave the stamp laying flat on the table. 2. Use a dry sponge on the stick. 3. It's going to be a light up and down pouncing motion to keep the glaze on the high part of the stamp for the crisp design. You don't have to ink up or glaze up the entire stamp. You can do bits and pieces and manipulate it when you press it down. When you do press it down, make sure you don't stretch it. It'll make the design a little fuzzy. If you do get some of the Caribbean blue onto the cap, don't worry about it because it is the same color and it'll just blend in. To add a little bit of pop to the cap, you're going to use S2716 Celestial Blue Crystal Glaze. Here's a tip on crystal glazes. All the crystals have a tendency to sink to the bottom of the jar. So take the lid off, use a palette knife, stir it up really good, then put the lid back on, shake up the glaze, and then when you have it nice and shook up in the jar, pour a little bit out onto a palette. When you use the brush to scoop it up and load your brush, now you're going to have a nice distribution of crystals and glaze to lay down a good coat onto the cap. 1 coat is sufficient. Okay, like most good designs, you do the background first and details last. Well, it's time for the details using SC15 Tuxedo. Pour out about the size of a nickel of SC15 Tuxedo. Prime your RB110 10-aught liner brush with water, and we're going to outline the scarf and the cap. If you get water on the brush and then you kind of sneak it into your black glaze, pulling it out and mixing it into your brush, that's going to help it thin out a little bit so that it'll nicely flow across your design work. Now, if you hold your brush like a pencil, it is going to have wider lines. If you hold your brush perpendicular or straight up and down and just use the tips, you're going to have finer lines. Once you get your outlines done, don't forget to give this little guy with some coal eyes. Using the detail brush, give 1 to 2 good coats on the eyes. You can do 1 coat and then move on and come back and do the 2nd coat. Outline the nose and give a few of the grow lines on the nose. Okay, he is a happy little guy, so don't forget to add the smile. Because Tuxedo is so heavily pigmented, 1 good coat is enough. It's going to be a nice black line. Finish outlining the face, scarf, and body. Don't forget to add his little stick arms. Alright, so a finishing touch to make this little cutie come alive is the 2nd coat of Tuxedo to the eyes, and then dip the back of your brush into the SC16 Cottontail and apply 2 dots for the little gleam in his eyes. Once that's dry enough, you can flip it over, and using your soft fan brush, you're going to apply 3 good coats of SC11 Blue Yonder to the back of the plate. Again, let it dry in between each coat. Once you have that done, your plate has been completely encapsulated with glaze. It is going to fire to a nice shiny finish. Let this dry, stilt it, and then fire it to cone 06/05. Enjoy!